on social media that all the truthers are jumping up and down like monkeys as usual, sharing because they think it's true because they're all thick and stupid and don't actually investigate anything. And it must be true because it's a scary guy in the video, a creepy looking guy in the video, so it must be true. And so the video is claiming that the Statue of Liberty is Lucifer. It's not, but I kind of can see there is a kind of a rationalization there. It doesn't make it doesn't isn't completely dopey. Now, the Statue of Liberty is absolutely not a woman. That's no doubt about that. The Statue of Liberty is a man, and it's a representation of the god Apollo. If you look at the thumbnail that I have for this video, that's how the god Apollo is shown. Now, the Statue of Liberty is Apollo wearing a toga, wearing a robe. Now, to understand what this means, we have to look at Freemasonry, because that's the whole story with this stuff. Yes, the ultimate god of Freemasonry, particularly Scottish Rite, Grand Lodge of Ireland, English Rite, York Rite, Germanic, Scandinavian Rite, is Lucifer. Not the Lucifer you think it is. Not the devil satanic beautiful. No, not that Lucifer. Lucifer in esoteric Freemasonry represents very similar to what his archetype is as a pagan god. Let me first of all, what Lucifer is. Lucifer is a Greco-Roman god that used to be called Phosphorus, who represented in the heavens by the planet Venus, and when it orbits the Earth in a course of a year creates the pentagram, which is why the pentagram is associated with Luciferianism, the apple of Eve, that kind of thing. And he represents brilliance, like a flash of brilliance, clarity of thinking, a clear mind. That's what Lucifer represents in the pagan sense. That's what his archetype is. In esoteric Luciferianism, which is common to both Theosophy and Freemasonry, they're very similar in terms of their esoteric feelings. Remember, Lucifer doesn't appear in the Bible. That's a mistaken translation in the King James Bible of a Hebrew term. Lucifer only appears in the King James Bible because, well, the Protestants can't read Hebrew that well. But he's not even in the Jewish text or anything. So that the first 5 books of the Torah that the Bible is based upon. So, and Lucifer and Satan is not the same thing. Anyway, so Lucifer is a Greco-Roman god representing clarity and brightness. That's why it's the morning star. You often, you have a really the dark night of the soul, and you wake up and you suddenly feel, okay, I feel really good. Why do I feel really good? That's the Luciferian moment. The morning star is in the sky. The morning star. You wake up feeling with sense of clarity and hope that you didn't have during the darkest night of the soul, 3 a.m. Think of the tarot card of the star. That's Lucifer shining bright in the sky. Okay, I've had a bad night. Things have been difficult. Now hope has returned. So that's Lucifer, So, and Lucifer in esoteric Freemasonry is the same kind of idea. It's hope, revival, the new beginnings, picking up that which has been scattered and rebuilding it into something new. The core fundamental maxim of all Freemasonry, to take that which has been scattered and to reorganize it into something new. Now, like I said, I mentioned those lodges that Lucifer is their god. The most powerful Freemasonic lodge in the world, and has been for a long time, is the Apollo Lodge. Now, the Apollo Lodge basically started in Ireland, in Dublin. It's still there in Trinity College to this day, although their original lodge was where the Apollo House is now today. That was a big controversy a few years ago on that, right beside the Liffey, Tara Street area, that Tara Street area of Dublin. And heading towards Butt Bridge. So that's where that's where the lodge originally began. Its most famous member in those days was Oscar Wilde, who fell afoul of them for some reason, and that's probably why he ended up falling from grace. But the Apollo Lodge is very, very big in America, very big in NASA, very big in the US military, the Army in particular, where the Scottish Rite is very big in the US Navy. So, and the intelligence services. The CIA is very big with the Apollo Lodge. It tends to be more relaxed about its membership, so Catholics and Protestants but tend to both join. Now, it's named, of course, it's dedicated to the veneration of the god Apollo. Okay? And the god Apollo is very easily and closely associated with the god Lucifer. So when they say it's Lucifer, they're not a million times off, but they're thinking like Lucifer the devil. It's not that, the pagan god Lucifer. So Apollo, if you look at any of the lists of gods in Greco-Roman gods, you will see that Apollo is often closely associated with not only Lucifer, but also Diana, who's the sister of Lucifer, and and also Aurora, who's the mother of Lucifer. So he's in that gang. He's in that subsect of those Greco-Roman gods. Absolutely, he's in that circle of that Luciferian circle. Although he's a supreme powerful god, he's more powerful, and a lot of Jesus Christ is based on Apollo as well. Now Apollo, when the mess happened and the lodges in Europe were corrupted by the Bavarian Illuminati in Weishaupt, particularly the Grand Orient in Paris, Apollo lodges started popping up all over the place, all over France and all over the United States, because people were not, the Freemasonry was declared to be riddled with spies, and to quote Lewis Spence, the damage had already been done by the time anyone figured it out. So the Apollo Lodge became very, very powerful, simply because people who were members of the Swedish Rite, the York Rite, or the Scottish Rite, or the Grand Lodge of Ireland, were suspicious that these things were being run by the Illuminati. They probably weren't at that point, but who knows? Now, this is why George Washington wanted the Illuminati to take over America's free lodges, because the new nation of America, the lodges were filled with French, English, Scottish, Irish Presbyterians, and so on. And these countries were all fighting each other. So Washington saw confusion and danger and possible espionage within the existing lodge structure in America, in a young nation just beginning, and a lot of them were military people as well, that he saw the Illuminati as a kind of a cleansing force, if they exist. Now, Washington said he didn't know for sure if they existed, if they exist, but by the time, they probably didn't by that time, Washington wrote those letters, but they did exist. There's Frankfurt banking families who basically infiltrated the lodges and steered them away from the esoteric kind of Freemasonry of Mozart and Liszt and Jonathan Swift, and moved them into the sort of like the political Republican Freemasonry that we have today. Hence why it was a big deal in America and in Ireland. The Apollo Lodge was a lodge that appealed to people who thinking this is like a clean lodge, that it wasn't infiltrated by the Bavarian Illuminati. It wasn't infiltrated by Weishaupt and the Frankfurt and the Hessian banking crowd. So it grew very, very well, the Apollo Lodge. Big in education, like academia, big in NASA when NASA came out, big in aerospace, big in engineering and science. That's where it really began. And when the Suez Canal was built by French, well, it was an international consortium, but the main thing was this was a triumph of the Apollo Lodge, and the thing was to site a Statue of Liberty at the entrance to the Suez Canal on the Mediterranean side. And Apollo was dressed in his toga, his formal gown, meaning this completion has happened. In the Apollo rite, you wear when you're inducted into the lodge, you walk through in a kind of a loincloth, and then at the end the Grand Master gives you a toga to wear. And when you put on the toga, it means your initiation has been completed and you're now a member of the lodge. So within the Apollo Lodge, wearing a toga represents the completion of taking that which has been scattered and rearranging it into something new. And these people saw them very, very much, these French Apollo Lodge Freemasons saw themselves very, very much connected to ancient Egypt, as all Masons do. And they were seeing the opening of the Suez Canal as a great achievement on par with the pyramids and the Sphinx, which it was. I mean, it was an incredible achievement at the time to build a canal that, like, it's. I mean, you didn't have to sail around Africa anymore to get into Europe from Asia, and the engineering was colossal involved in it. Sand is, anyone tell you, any engineer or civil engineer tell you, a sand is the worst thing to build a road, railway, or any kind of canal through. And so they built it successfully, and this phenomenal achievement. So the statue was to appear at the front of it for all kinds of political reasons, and the fact, and so on and so forth, and it didn't happen. So Eiffel turned his thoughts to and the Apollo Freemasons. Well, it wasn't really him so much, but the Apollo Freemasons just had this big statue, didn't know what to do with it, and decided, well, let's give it as a gift to America. Now, it wasn't a gift by the French to America; it was a gift by the Apollo Freemasons to America, to American Freemasonic. So it was like a token or a gesture. And they found an island off south of Manhattan called Goat Island, and they said that's the ideal place for it. And they did all the geomancy and everything like that around it, created and then put this beautiful statue above it. So that's what the Statue of Liberty is. It's Apollo wearing a toga, not Lucifer. Although the Luciferian concept is not a million miles away. Apollo is often represented by a flash of light as well. Hence the big halo on his head, and he's why he's holding a torch. It's definitely not a woman. It's not. There is no such thing as Lady Liberty. That doesn't exist. Something that's just made up to appease the masses. If you were to take any person who around the world who never heard of the Statue of Liberty, and you stood them in front of it, and he said, "What's that?" They go, "It's a Roman guy wearing a toga." And there you go. See you, bye.